The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are the speaker's own and does not represent legal or accounting advice or counsel and should not be seen as such. The material and information presented here is for general information purposes only, a conversation. We make no promises or assertions on how this information will impact your business, your personal life, or financial well-being. The information relayed does not imply endorsement or offer opposition to any specific organization, product, or services. Welcome to Shift. I'm your host, Lori Power, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. I want to welcome you today to Succession Shift. And if you can take a moment, Tom, and just introduce yourself, your company, and how you started working in the exit planning field.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Tom Hamilton-Piercy. I'm a CFA charter holder. And quickly, my background, I was a trader on the institutional equity markets in Canada, both for stocks and for bonds. So I was effectively trading our pension fund, if you will, with TD Bank for a number of years. And then I shifted, come the financial crisis, I shifted to technology for about 10 years. I worked with a couple of partners. We started up a firm, grew it to about 30 people. And then 2018, 2019, I believe, I shifted back to finance specifically, where I was involved with my current company, Baker Tilly, in the US, always working out of Canada, but reporting to the US. I was in valuation for a number of years, and then I moved over to the M&A practice for Baker Tilly in the US. In 2023, mid-2023, I shifted over to the Baker Tilly Canada group, which is the group I'm in now. And we are effectively a team of about 15 people. We focus on mergers and acquisitions, transition, planning for clients, that sort of thing. Very quickly, because I know I've already done enough on this intro, Baker Tilly is the 8th largest accounting firm in the world. We're in about 150 different countries. In Canada, we're roughly 1,700 people, and we're all over, different provinces and whatnot. And my department, like I said, is about 15 people. So we're very much a kind of a secondary service offering for the company. Hope that's clear.
And niche, I'm assuming fairly niche in being able to work with business owners and help them transition into their next.
Yeah, niche, yes, definitely. I mean, offering, a bit of consulting there, but certainly we hone a lot of our services based on getting people in market, trying to find buyers, and doing everything that kind of goes about that whole process.
When your clients are coming to you, are they, because I can make an assumption that they're already using the company for the accounting services, and now the accountant has picked up on some signs that they may be getting ready for that succession. Is that the majority of how clients will come to see you in the first place, or will you simply get people coming in the door and saying, listen, I don't know what to do next?
Yeah, it's a combination. Certainly majority is an accurate way of describing it. I mean, 1,700 people, all these little, accounting offices, you've got a collection of professionals that are, close to their clients. I would probably give it around a 70% of our client base really does come from the Baker Tilly network. And then the other 30% comes from, word of mouth, knowing lawyers, knowing people like yourself, Lori, that kind of thing where we build relationships over time. Yeah, time is a big thing. This is probably one of the biggest things that any entrepreneur really goes through. Starting a company is one thing, but selling it. And so those relationships are really exactly that. They're relationships. They're not just, hey, get this thing done for me and move on to the next one. It's stuff that takes a lot of time. So trust is a huge component. Hence why having your accountant whom you've been with for a number of years to refer to our department, yeah, that's a kind of a surefire way to kind of get your pipeline moving forward.
Sometimes when I'm thinking about accounting professionals, and I know a lot of phenomenal accounting professionals, But by and large, I think of them as rear window. They're looking at what has already happened in that transaction. And the focus is how do we stay level with CRA so we're not going
Right.
to get into trouble. And so it really does become a rear focus on the business. What have you done? So those lag indicators, if you would, how do your accountant teams go forward with those lead indicators to say, okay, well, we've looked at where you've been, now where you're going? Because it's not my experience that many practices don't do that. I'm not saying that at all.
Right.
What I'm suggesting is that perhaps business owners aren't listening to accountants when they're trying to be more forward thinking. What are some things that both from the business perspective and from the accounting perspective where do they meet?
Yeah, no, that's it. It's a great observation and a reality. Accountants in general, they're not the most, not to knock the accountants. The reality is exactly what you're saying. They're always looking backwards. It's just the nature of the industry. And as such, they're not as proactive, maybe is a word to choose, to think forward and to think of the next echelon. Um, so part of our role in our department is to kind of empower them a little bit to ask some of those probing questions, see what's, the next chapter for individuals. Certainly, there's markers that are pretty easy for a lot of people. If you take a moment to think about it, there are markers that can kind of figure out, okay, there's maybe some transition conversations that need to happen right now. So one of them, of course, would be, age, getting close to retirement. Interesting enough, I've seen often enough when it comes to age, you're getting those mid 40-year-olds who have young children, but they've been doing the business for the last 20, 25 years, and they're noticing that they're losing the best years of their children's lives. And so that is an interesting dynamic to kind of, hey, let's talk about that transition plan a little bit more as well. Um, Talking about statistics, I read an article, I'm going to say about 3 months ago, 6 months ago, maybe. It was in the US based, but I would take it for truth, both sides of the border. More than 50% of business exits are done involuntarily. And so that's
Yes.
a result of either things like death, things like divorce. You've got a butting heads with your partner, a bankruptcy, however you want to characterize it. Point simply being is, if you take a step back as an entrepreneur, and I know I'm kind of getting off what your question was a little bit, but if you're getting, if you look at your business and you realize that, a good 90% of your wealth, however you want to, dollar amounts, it's arbitrary, but a big chunk of your financial interests are associated to your company, and the vast majority of people don't have any plan on how that
No.
succession could happen. Couple that with more than 50% of the time, you do it when it's not even voluntarily. There is definitely a disconnect there. And I believe, the accountants are probably the ones closest to the numbers. And these are the individuals that should be the most empowered and the most, observant and starting those conversations with their clients if they're really going to professionally service their clients the way they should be doing.
I
Yeah.
100% agree. And your stats are right on the Exit Planning Institute, which is of course American based, but again, they're looking at both sides of the border now with so
Yeah.
many people in the M&A industry, and they're seeing 76% of those that even start the process. So let's say it's a divorce, a disability, a death that is forcing the hand. Dementia falls into that,
Yeah.
the big D's, right?
Right.
That are forcing the hand of the business owner. And the adage is somebody will buy it. Well, that's actually not true. And statistics hold that 76% of businesses, it doesn't sell. It's a fire sale. You're getting assets
Yeah.
only because you didn't put the planning in place. And I 100% agree with you. If we can somehow have the industry itself look for those little nuggets. The other thing you said that really brings a thought to my mind that I hadn't thought of before is you're right. You could have a business owner in their mid 40s, so considered relatively young, but they've been in their business more than 20 years. Do they still have the spark for that business? Should
Right.
they perhaps transition into another business? Is there another business opportunity that they could bring new and rejuvenate into that industry? And I think that is something that in the succession world, we do need to talk a little bit more about, because succession planning isn't about just selling your business and being done, going off into the sunset and playing
Yeah.
golf 24/7,
Right.
right?
Right.
But it can be selling that one entity and moving into another one because our interests change, right? Like what I was interested in as a 20-year-old is certainly different as a mature woman.
Yeah.
See what I did there? I didn't say my age.
Well played. Well played. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. When you think about business owners, it's depending on their story, their backgrounds. Some of them fell into the business, right? Some of them were gifted, for lack of a better way of saying it, because they were, the children of the original entrepreneur. But some of them, and a good chunk of them, are the ones that just started their own business, and they've got that entrepreneur hat on. And yeah, they'll be good at making their widgets, whatever business they're in. But the reality is they're probably really just good at business a lot of the times, right? And I think you're hitting the nail on the head. I mean, I don't know a single business owner, however A type you want to position these individuals, that just kind of says, yeah, I'm doing nothing after I've sold my company. That's just not how it's not how people think, and certainly not that kind of individual thinks. And to think about that next chapter, it's very unlikely that it's going to be retirement, full stop. It's going to be, okay, what else am I going to do? It's not unheard of that entrepreneurs are serial entrepreneurs. They're going to go in one and then they'll go into another one, and 10 years later, or however they want to organize it. So yeah, it's and in each journey they take, they're going to learn a little bit more on how to kind of organize the business side. Aside from just building the widgets, they're going to think about, oh, how do I organize my HR differently? How do I organize, my payroll? How do I organize my operations? They'll learn one skill set from business one, and they can transfer that to business two, so to speak.
I don't know why
Yeah.
some people pigeonhole themselves, right? We are not a one and done.
Yeah.
You think about our university days, our early learning, our getting into our first business. Did that have to be the be all to end all? And I just stay in that one business line.
Right.
And as I had said to you when we first started, my first love was radio. My first love was
Right.
broadcasting.
Yeah.
Am I still in broadcasting? No,
Yeah.
no. But should I have pigeonholed myself and say, okay, even though my interests have branched here and I can use my skill set here, I said I went to school for journalism, so there, I'm staying in journalism.
Right. Yeah. Life is long. Life is
Like,
long. It's I'm getting maybe a little philosophical here, but the reality is, I feel that going to school, choosing that subject, and then saying that's me, and then continuing to do that or some variation of that really close to for the rest of your life. I don't know. I mean, I'm taking a step back, and I was at a conference last week talking about, there was a subject matter about AI, and I was reminded at which the speed of things change. When I was in tech for almost 10 years, it was like every 6 months, if you're not moving and modifying your business model in some fashion, whether it's changing processes, adding new products or services, or looking at completely different industries, you're kind of left in the dust. And you know, fortunately, unfortunately, you're thinking about accountants, even lawyers. I mean, we're kind of the slowest people to move, right? There's a pretty stable, commoditized kind of service to some degree. But I don't know if we can sit on our hands like that anymore. And I think that's the reality with most companies. As much as you may not be, have that fortitude in tech, or moving quickly, or moving forward at a rampant pace. I'm sorry, but the world is probably going to force your hand, and you kind of there was a race driver, an Italian one. I forgot his name. This was in the 80s, but it by far a quote that I live by, and I grabbed onto this maybe a decade plus ago. And he basically said, if you're in control, you're not driving fast enough. And I was like,
Oh,
oh,
like
that's so
that.
on point. That
Yeah.
is so on point. And so, yeah, and I think, this is all coming back to that conversation with the mid 40s individual who's been doing it for, slugging it for the last 2 decades. 2 decades, that's long. That's a
Yeah,
lifetime for a lot of people, right?
it is.
And then, yeah, I mean, okay, why not have a conversation? Let's look about the next chapter. Can we, and if it's not selling your business, maybe it's doing some acquisitions. Maybe that's something that they haven't done before. They've always been thinking about the organic growth, you know?
People
Anyway,
don't even stay in their same house for that long a time.
right?
They don't drive the same car. You don't keep the
Yeah,
same pictures on your wall. The
yeah,
changes as we happen. And you really bring up such an excellent point, because if I look at the way I did business last year, the way I did business 3 years ago, and certainly the way I did business 5 years ago before the big pandemic,
yeah,
it's night and day.
yeah,
It's not even
absolutely.
recognizable.
Yeah,
So why wouldn't we take the skill set that we apply to our business to keep it changing and keep it evolving and keeping it growing, and say, you know what, I've now nurtured this. I have made this the best I can be over the last 20 some years.
right.
Now is the optimum time to sell it. In the same manner you would sell a house while you can still sell it. You don't wait
Yeah,
until it's crumbling and the roof needs to be repaired and you've got
precisely.
leaks all over the place.
Yeah, yeah. Well, interesting enough, one of the things that is a value marker of a company is, unless the entrepreneur is hell bent on staying in the business, right? And they're just taking a partial sale, right? Maybe only want to sell 50% or whatever it is. But often enough, most entrepreneurs are kind of like, yeah, I want to get out of this. I want to move on to the next thing, right? But a huge value marker for a buyer is how much is the business around the owner? How much is the owner influencing the sales, the processes, all of those mechanisms? And if the owner is really involved in the company, I'm sorry, that's going to make it really hard for you're going to get your top dollar, because they got to wean you out over a year, 2 years. There's a lot of risk for a new buyer. And so what I'm building to is, if someone's thinking about that next chapter, they should already be thinking about, look, I'm not going to sell tomorrow. I might sell in 2 years from now. But if you're thinking about that, or if you're thinking about, the next business you want to run, you have to actually start weaning yourself off. And effectively, you're creating an exit without even exiting, because you're not actually selling the company, but you're still getting out of it, so to speak. That's the best way to kind of create a value marker in your business, right?
I really like that. And I've heard it said too that you should be able to walk away from your business for a month. If you could
Yeah.
walk away from your business for a month and your business still continue to grow and flourish, thrive without you,
Yes.
not to say that you can't come back in, but to be able to walk away and still come back to a business. Well, there's a mindset to that too. That means I can take a vacation and
Yeah.
things are going to continue.
Right.
But if you're 24/7 for 20 plus years, I'm sorry, you're not going to be as engaged as you were those first couple of years where it's new
100%
and
agree.
exciting and
Yeah.
dynamic. You're just
Yeah.
going to be worn down
Yeah.
by the whirlwind that is your business.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've been in the position, when I was running my tech firm, I was one of the guys that was kind of had my hands everywhere. And when I was starting to look for the exits, I'm like, how is this place going to run? How is it going to exist? And yeah, okay, maybe it was a little bit on my high horse, if I'm going to be honest with myself. But you little by little, you delegating and start building some trust with some of your individuals. And if you're really thinking about it, a company isn't just one person. It's a collection of people, right? No, nothing of significance was done alone. You're always doing it as a group. And
Absolutely.
the more an entrepreneur can get to the mindset where they're starting to pass and empower the individuals around them, now you're becoming a real leader, right? You're inspiring them to do more. And let's be honest, I mean, the end game is, let's make the biggest value that we can within this company. And you start rewarding, for lack of a better word, individuals around you with more tasks, more responsibilities, so that they can blossom to the people they are. Yeah, they're part of the company. They're part of the asset that now you're thinking about moving away from, and cashing in, so to speak. So it's the assembled workforce is what we're getting to. So
And you know,
Yes.
which I love talking about the workforce. I mean, really, because
Yeah, definitely.
it's part of that value marker is that
Biggest
workforce.
biggest asset. Yeah. When I was in valuation, I don't know if people are aware of this sort of thing, but valuation, we do when an acquisition is done, there's a purchase price allocation. And so you have to look at a business and kind of say, well, what's worth what? Because there's tax implications, right? If I say, I bought $1 million business and $100,000 was just to pay for the net working capital, okay, well, there's no real tax benefit write off or anything with that. Whereas the other 900,000 was goodwill. Well, that goodwill is now an amortized asset. Every year you can kind of take a tax write off of it. But one of the components in a purchase price allocation, a PPA, is assembled workforce. It's literally how much are the people in this business worth? How much do they contribute to the bottom line? There's methodologies on how to math that out, but the reality is it's definitely a recognized component of value in a company.
And I've had businesses recently that have come under my radar that where they have failed. They have failed the purchase. The purchase has fallen apart simply because they could not transition their
Yeah.
people over. So it's not just a matter, and I think there was a big component that the owner could not, it was too much in the business themselves. But as well, they could not transition their people over to the new ownership. People
Mhm.
were all ready to jump ship.
Mhm.
Sanjay Nath, who is a business coach, told me a couple of years ago. I asked him, I said, Sanjay, what's the difference between ego and confidence? Because I feel really confident in what I do. And I don't mind telling people that I really know what I do. But sometimes I've got that whole maritime thing of, oh, you're getting too big for your britches, right? So I feel like I've got too much ego going on there. And he said, well, you might, but he said the difference, and I love the way he had put it. He said the difference between ego and confidence is ego is when you think you're the only one who can do the job, right?
Right.
And confidence is when you know you can do the job and you're able to teach it to your team.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love that. And I think it segues very well with what you're saying is if the business is a going concern, if the business has a value, then we as entrepreneurs have to be confident enough to have our team be able to run it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. And it's that same conference that I went to that had the AI discussion point. They also had a discussion point about stress, and everybody in the room, they're all entrepreneurs, and they're all thinking about, can I make payroll? And I'm always thinking about my business 24/7. And it was talking about like oxytocin and all the chemical reactions that happen in your brain and all that kind of stuff. And the more you have a team around you that you've empowered and has built up around you, and they're all on the same page and they're rowing in the same direction, there's more to life than just money. And
Yeah.
reduced stress is a big part of the equation. And I think, anyone who's, whether you're thinking about transition or not, having that team and passing off the stress as a shared effort, it's paramount to creating something, that's great. And that's how you get there. So,
And the biggest commodity, especially these days, where is time, right?
yes.
I love the, it's like when they introduced the GST, it's just going to be a temporary measure.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, right.
we think about we think about technology. Technology was supposed to save us all of this time. It's a tool. It's going to
Right.
save us all the time. And it did. And I wonder if we are just creatures that we need to fill the time because I find technology has not in the end, I just do simply do more. So
Right.
it didn't, while it may have saved me my data entry and a lot
Yeah.
of other things,
Right.
I can look back to those good old days and go,
Yeah.
well, where was my time being saved here?
Yeah. Well, interesting enough, coming full circle, what you just hit on is, yeah, technology is supposed to save us time. And yet, look at us, we're just becoming more productive. Well, let's talk about the business owner who is now sold and has this dream of just doing nothing. Oh, you have all this new time. So you're just going to sit on your hands and do not. I'm sorry. It's just not how we're built.
No.
And especially with an entrepreneur, right? And they're going to be thinking about what's the next chapter. And I've spoken to a number of company owners that we've sold after the fact, a year or 2 years later. they're still trying to figure out, what am I doing now? Because they're going around here, they're doing little things here, but simply the concept of doing nothing is so far from the truth for the vast majority of these individuals.
That needs to be part of the planning mechanism
Yeah,
is, the EPI says that's the third leg of the tool. You need to know what you're doing next in
mm,
order to have a successful transition. It's just absolutely imperative.
yeah.
When you say about people who are dreaming about doing nothing, there's health consequences to that as well.
Oh, no
What does
question.
nothing look
Yeah.
like? Right?
How many times have
Nothing.
you heard stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
As soon as as soon as they quit their job, right, that they probably hated years later or something, and then they find out they have cancer or something like that, right? It's brutal. There's health consequences by all means. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's very true. Yeah.
In my line of work, I come across, because I deal with business owners all the time, and because it's benefits and, health issues come up. And most recently, probably just in 2023, we had a business owner I'd worked with for 20 years, right? I was there when the
I
business was small. We put the benefit plan in place and it grew with them. And he did all of the right things, Tom. He transitioned himself. He had a team. He was getting ready. He was in the last year before going, well, he's not with us anymore.
mm,
Right. And I remember having that conversation with him because we had been friends as well as colleagues and business associates. And he'd said, I wish, I wish, I wish, I wish, I wish. Right.
yeah.
And so, as a last note, I will say, and I hope that we can do another conversation because I think there's a lot here to unpack. And I'd
Yeah.
love to get into more of those value situations where what is value to a company. But, the time is the commodity here. The time is the commodity in keeping the spark alive.
Yeah.
So,
I've come to realize that the world, anything we do could be great and mindful, but unless it's easy, we often don't do it. You can empower people with the best knowledge on how to manage their finances, as an example. That's great. I know how to do it now. But if it's hard, and even hard isn't even that hard, it's like literally just going to the bank and having a conversation with someone. Oh, that's out of my day to day. Um, Create things that are easy, and then you will have a much better chance of success. And what I'm building to is, if any owner or business operator is really thinking about something, well, you don't know what you don't know. And I'm not saying that facetiously. The reality is, you should probably just have a conversation with someone who probably has seen this a little bit more often, and just make it easier on yourself. Don't second guess. Just get informed. Have a conversation. See what people can, bestow on you, and then you'll have a different perspective, and that might actually progress you in the direction you maybe didn't even know you were going. So
well, the reality is you have a process. You have a successful process,
yeah,
M&A. You do. So why would I try to reinvent that process? Why not be part of that process? I think that's part of the success of being an entrepreneur is we
yeah,
don't try to recreate the wheel. We use the wheel as the tool that it is. So why not call Tom and say, listen, you have the process in play. I'd like to get onto that wagon and move forward because
yeah.
you can make it easy.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, you're not living in a vacuum. Yeah, you built your own business. You probably got some guys to do certain things. Well, this is just one of many things that just have a conversation, whether it's directly with me or any professional in the field that's been doing it for a number of years, that has some pedigree. One of the things, and this is a very much a sidebar, Canada, unfortunately, is the only G20 country that does not have legislation for business brokers. The United States, which I was there for 4 years doing this, I had to get licensed. I had to do a bunch of classes. I had to get registered with the SEC. I had to do fingerprints, whole 9 yards. Coming to Canada, it's the Wild West, unfortunately. And I'm saying that simply as just something to be aware of when you have conversations with professionals that do this sort of thing. The legislation, unfortunately, is not quite there to protect sellers that much. So you may want to, kick a couple of cans, have a couple conversations, and build that trust with someone that that resonates well with you. And I think what I was pulling from before is, it doesn't have to be hard. Make it easy. Just have conversations with the right people, and then see where they can take it from there.
And credentials matter. They do, Tom.
Credentials
Your,
definitely
your
matter. Yeah,
credentials absolutely matter.
yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to leave it there until the next time, but I'm going to be picking on you. So,
By all means, this is a great conversation. You've got a good aura around you, and I like having chats with you, Lori. So I'm looking forward to the next one.